Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
From AI-inspired insights from farmers.
If you're enjoying what we're doing here, we'd love to hear from you too.
Absolutely.
Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and definitely leave a comment telling us what you want to see more of on this deep dive.
We're always looking for new ideas, and we really value your feedback.
So what farm-related mysteries are you dying to uncover?
Right.
What questions are keeping you up at night? Let us know, and maybe we'll tackle them in a future deep dive.
You wake up, pour your morning coffee. It's the simple, comforting ritual, right? That rich aroma, the warmth. But what if the hidden journey of those beans is getting, well, incredibly complicated, facing threats that could change your morning, like forever?
Yeah, that simple act, brewing coffee, it relies on these really complex global systems. And one of the biggest challenges right now, it's really clear in the sources, is climate change. It's posing a pretty serious threat to the future of our favorite drink.
Exactly. We've got a stack of articles and research here diving deep into this. They lay out how climate change is hitting coffee farming hard. And importantly, they explore the cutting-edge science and these really ambitious collaborations trying to fight back, build resilience.
So our mission in this deep dive is pretty much to unpack what these sources tell us. The challenges coffee is facing, sure, but also the innovative solutions being explored. We're aiming to see how we can make sure coffee isn't just surviving, but actually thriving in the future.
Okay, let's jump right in then. How exactly is a changing climate directly threatening our cup of coffee?
Well, the sources, they paint a pretty stark picture, honestly. Coffee plants, especially arabica, which most of us love, they're incredibly sensitive. They need very specific temperature ranges, predictable weather. So fluctuations, particularly extreme heat and drought, they're just devastating.
We saw a really vivid example, didn't we, from India in one article. Coffee regions there hit by a severe heat wave, very little rain this past season.
Yes, that was quite striking. Mayor Corinth, grower at Rampal Estate, he mentioned getting only, 6 centimeters of rain in April?
Yeah.
A critical time. They couldn't irrigate enough. And Rohan Kurian at Gallinor Plantations saw temperatures hitting 39-40 Celsius. That's way hotter than the usual 30-33. They'd expect that.
And that difference, it might not sound huge to us sitting here, but for a coffee plant, it's massive, isn't it? The sources really stress how crucial the timing of that rain is.
Absolutely critical, yeah. Coffee needs specific rain to trigger flowering. And then it needs these follow-up backing showers, maybe 3 weeks later, for the little coffee cherries to set properly. If that cycle gets disrupted, well, the blossoms either don't form or they just drop off. Corinth estimated almost a 40% yield loss just on his estate. Korean saw buds that just couldn't develop.
Wow. And it's not just India, right? The sources mentioned unpredictable weather, scattered flowering periods in places like Peru, too. Same root cause, mist or irregular rain.
Exactly. And when the plants go through these long, dry spells, they get stressed. It's a survival thing, really. They speed up ripening. But this means smaller cherries, less mucilage. That's the sticky, sweet layer on the bean. Less mucilage. And the bean dries out too fast. The pulp sticks to the parchment layer. It causes problems.
And that hits the flavor directly, doesn't it? Less mucilage, less sugar, so you get a flatter, less interesting taste in the cup. But too much rain isn't good either. Makes the mucilage watery.
Right, dilutes it. Also bad for flavor. And beyond the fruit, drought hammers the soil. It cracks, damages the tiny root hairs the plant needs for water and nutrients. Plus, those essential soil microbes, they need moisture to flourish, to do their job supporting the plant.
And stress plants are weaker overall, more vulnerable to pests, diseases. The sources brought up the coffeeberry borer, white stem borer, coffee leaf rust roya. There was mention of a big rise in white stem borer in India, killing plants outright.
It paints a worrying picture, highlights the vulnerability. There was one projection from a 2015 study mentioned that was particularly stark. It suggested climate change could potentially wipe out over half the land suitable for growing both Robusta and Arabica coffee by 2050.
Over half, that's huge. And while farmers feel it first, this just ripples out, doesn't it? Price instability, supply worries, lower quality coffee. It sounds like without major intervention, cultivation itself could become unsustainable in many areas.
So, okay, those are the challenges, pretty serious ones. What are the sources saying about solutions? What's being done or developed in the field?
Right. This is where we shift gears. From the problem to, cultivating resilience. The sources introduce climate-smart agriculture, CSA. It's framed as this comprehensive approach. 3 pillars: adaptation, mitigation, and productivity.
Adaptation seems key there. Things like diversifying crops on the farm so you're not relying on just coffee, Efficient water management too, rainwater harvesting, drip irrigation, and using climate data to make smarter choices, like when to plant, maybe when to expect pests.
Yeah, and one practice specifically highlighted was agroforestry, basically integrating trees, ideally native ones, into the coffee farm.
Ah, agroforestry. That offers a ton of benefits, doesn't it? Shade from the trees helps control the temperature around the coffee plants, keeps them cooler, helps hold moisture in the soil too. And as the tree leaves decompose, they add nutrients back, support those vital soil microbes we talked about.
And they help with mitigation too, storing carbon. The sources gave some estimates, anywhere from roughly zero point 0.3 up to 15 tons of carbon per hectare sequestered in the trees and soil.
Technology is also stepping up in CSA. Things like precision agriculture using remote sensing, data analytics to manage resources, water, fertilizer more effectively, and digital tools giving farmers real-time info on weather, pests, plant health.
But the sources really emphasize it's not just about tech or trees. Success needs knowledge sharing, building farmers' capacity, and engaging everyone, farmers, researchers, policymakers, NGOs, the coffee companies, and leveraging local knowledge or traditional practices. That's seen as really important too.
Okay, so beyond those field practices, the sources also dive into cutting-edge science, gene editing, artificial intelligence, how they might help create future coffee crops that can handle these stresses.
Right. Gene editing is described as this technology allowing for incredibly precise tweaks to a plant's DNA. You can add, delete, or replace specific bits of genetic code.
And the potential in agriculture is, well, huge. Boosting yield, improving nutrition, disease resistance, and crucially for us here, building climate resilience, targeting traits for heat or drought tolerance.
CRISPR-Cas9 comes up a lot. It's presented as a key tool here. Known for speed, accuracy, versatility, uses a guide molecule to find a specific DNA spot for editing. Described as more cost-effective, user-friendly than older methods, too.
And there are even newer techniques building on it, like base editing, prime editing, for even finer, more precise changes, potentially fewer off-target effects. The main point is that ability for precise modification.
So how does this link directly to making crops climate resilient? What examples did we see?
Well, the sources didn't point to like a specific gene-edited coffee ready to go yet, but they show the potential using examples from other crops. Gene editing has boosted salinity tolerance in soybeans, for instance. Research is using CRISPR to try and improve drought tolerance in wheat, boosting disease resistance in grapevines.
Okay, so the science is there. It's being used to make other plants tougher against stress. And didn't the sources mention finding a wild coffee species, one that's naturally heat tolerant and tastes good, like arabica?
Yes, exactly, which suggests those desirable genetic traits exist. Gene editing could potentially help move or enhance those traits in our cultivated varieties much faster than traditional breeding.
Right. And this is where AI, artificial intelligence, comes into the picture as a partner in this.
The crucial partner, yeah. Think about the sheer volume of data. Genomics, the plant's DNA code. Phenomics, how the plant actually looks and performs in different conditions. AI is brilliant at crunching that big data quickly, accurately.
So it can sift through all that genetic info, link it to how plants handle heat or drought in trials, and basically predict which genes matter or which combinations might make a more resilient plant.
Precisely. AI speeds up the whole breeding process for finding and developing these next-gen resilient crops. It helps with genomic prediction, selection, figuring out which plants have the best shot at inheriting good traits. Makes sense of all that complex physical data.
Helps breeders understand that link between the genes, the genotype, and how the plant actually performs, the phenotype, under stress like drought or heat.
And AI helps in practical ways too. Analyzing images to track growth, spot disease early, tell crops from weeds. It can even predict how well a specific CRISPR edit might work before you even try it in the lab.
So AI isn't doing the editing, but it's like a super smart assistant for the breeders, helping them make faster, better decisions to get those climate-resilient traits developed.
That's a perfect way to put it. It dramatically cuts down timelines that traditionally take, well, decades.
Okay, but applying this science, implementing field solutions, that takes serious money and coordination, right? Which brings us to World Coffee Research, WCR.
Yes, WCR is highlighted as a nonprofit focused on science-based solutions for coffee's big challenges, especially climate. And their work feels urgent given the market supply shortages, high green coffee prices, like that US $4 a pound peak in early 2025.
And there are projections of a potential major supply shortage by 2030 if things don't change.
WCR points to a huge barrier, this massive funding gap in coffee R&D. They estimate an annual shortfall of around US $452 million.
Wow, $452 million a year. Why is the gap so big for coffee specifically?
Well, the sources explain it's kind of a unique market failure for coffee. It's a tree crop, right? So R&D takes a long time, 15, 20 years to see returns. Hard for private companies. Plus, public research in coffee-growing countries, often lower-income nations, is typically underfunded. And building a private seed business for a tree crop like coffee is just challenging.
So WCR tries to bridge that gap by rallying the industry itself.
Exactly. They secure multi-year funding commitments from coffee companies worldwide. The sources mentioned a recent U.S. $10 million renewal pledge specifically for breeding and strengthening seed systems.
And a big part of their work is these global networks.
Yes, two major ones, one for arabica, one for robusta. They involve 11 producing countries, countries that export something like 43% of the world's coffee. This network structure is vital. It allows collaboration, sharing genetic material, coordinating research, much more efficient.
And the big goal for these networks.
It's ambitious. Deliver 100 improved arabica varieties by 2030, with robusta to follow. And crucially, the member countries will also release their own locally adapted varieties developed through the network.
And it's clear from the sources that public-private partnerships are just essential for this to work.
Oh, absolutely emphasized. When private investment, like from WCR members, works alongside public resources and government programs in producing countries, it's a win-win-win. Companies get more secure supply. Farmers get better, more resilient trees, hopefully more income. And the countries benefit from stronger exports, a more sustainable sector.
Let's look at some specific examples the sources gave. Show how this collaboration is actually, well, brewing resilience on the ground.
El Salvador is a great case study. Since 2021, their government has this huge project, renovating 35,000 hectares, that's massive, planting 150 million new trees, focusing specifically on high-yield, high-quality, leaf rust-resistant varieties.
And WCR helped with that huge national effort.
Exactly. They gave technical advice on regulations for seedling quality, brought in DNA fingerprinting tools, seed health checks. This level of quality control isn't standard everywhere. It basically de-risks that massive investment for the government and farmers. Helps ensure those 150 million trees are actually the improved varieties they're meant to be.
That's a powerful example, using science to back up big public spending.
Another one, Peru. In 2024, WCR partnered with 8 local groups there, set up 10 new seed lots for improved varieties. These lots should generate enough quality seed for about 4 million new plants a year. And that work gets direct support from companies like JDE Peets and Keurig Dr. Pepper.
In Uganda.
Similar story. WCR worked with the Uganda Coffee Development Authority, distributed 100,000 disease-resistant plants, trained over 100 nursery operators and seed producers to multiply them. That was supported by Strauss Coffee and Taylors of Harrogate. They also helped set up 10 farmer-led nurseries, aiming for 100,000 high-quality Robusta trees each year from those.
These examples really drive home how those foundational investments from WCR's private members enable these tangible, on-the-ground partnerships, bringing tools and better plants to farmers.
And it seems public commitments to closing that R&D gap are maybe starting to increase, partly because WCR members are actively pushing governments in both consuming and producing countries to invest more in ag research and coffee seed systems.
Okay, so pulling all this together, the climate threat, the field practices, the science, the collaboration, what does it all mean for the long-term future of, your daily brew?
Well, the long-term vision, based on these sources, it's really about speeding things up. Traditional coffee breeding is just slow. WCR hopes to see the first improved varieties from their networks out by maybe 2036. With new ones following every 3 years after that.
And that speed is crucial because, as the sources noted, so many current coffee varieties are ancient, 50 to 100 years old. Half the world's trees might need replacing in the next decade. We don't just need new trees. We need genuinely better, more resilient trees for today's climate.
Exactly. The ambition seems to be shifting the whole mindset in coffee farming. Moving away from what one source called a poverty mindset, just surviving towards an innovation mindset, where farmers have access to continually improving plants and practices, a cycle of development and replacement.
Now, looking ahead, especially with advanced science like gene editing and more industry involvement, one source did touch on the ethical side of things.
Absolutely, and it's important. The potential benefits are clear climate resilience, maybe less pesticide use, but the sources acknowledge concerns. Things like corporate control over new technologies, making sure small farmers who grow most of the world's coffee actually benefit and aren't left behind.
How can those concerns be tackled?
Well, the source mentioned things like open source research approaches, plus the role of public institutions and nonprofits in developing tech and varieties suited for smallholders, ensuring broad access.
And there are ecological questions too, right? Long-term impacts on biodiversity, soil health, genes spreading to wild relatives.
Which points to the need, as the source noted, for rigorous independent risk assessments by public bodies, clear labeling for consumers, and really robust public discussion involving everyone, farmers, consumers, scientists, ethical guidelines, codes of conduct. They're seen as essential for responsible innovation. It's complex, for sure, but vital to consider for making sure these advances lead to positive outcomes.
Thinking about all this, we wanted to offer a sort of bonus insight, drawing from the sources. How can you, the listener, maybe indirectly support this kind of work, the sustainable research, the resilience building?
Yeah, well, the sources make it clear organizations like World Coffee Research depend heavily on funding from their member companies and partners. We mentioned some earlier, JD Peet's, Keurig Dr. Pepper, Strauss Coffee, Taylors of Harrogate backing specific projects.
So one way you can potentially make a difference is by supporting companies that are genuinely investing in this kind of sustainable coffee research, variety development, farmer support. Look for companies actually talking about their R&D investments, their work on farmer resilience.
And remember, too, those WCR members are pushing governments for more investment in agricultural R&D and seed systems. While you might not lobby directly, just staying informed, engaging in conversations about the future of food and agriculture, like the ethics source suggested, that contributes to the public awareness that can influence priorities.
It really boils down to being an informed consumer, doesn't it? And recognizing that the future of your coffee depends on this whole complex mix of science, farming, and industry support.
So there you have it. That was our deep dive.
We've looked at the pretty serious climate challenges facing coffee, explored promising solutions from practical climate-smart agriculture right there on the farm, all the way to cutting-edge gene editing and AI.
And we've seen how vital that industry collaboration is with organizations like World Coffee Research, really working to bring these innovations to the places and people who need them most.
The stakes are definitely high. Ensuring coffee remains resilient, sustainable, for the millions of farmers, for the global industry, and yeah, for your future cups.
So maybe consider that intricate blend. The science, the ethics, the industry action, the informed consumers, all needed to truly future-proof something so globally important and so personally cherished as coffee.
What role will that breakthrough innovation and that collaborative spirit play in making sure your favorite brew doesn't just survive, but actually thrives as our climate keeps changing? Something to mull over, perhaps, with your next sip. We hope this exploration has been valuable. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Hitting that like button and smash that subscribe.